You're listening to A Seat at the Tech Table, a podcast by Sisters in Tech, hosted by Anna and Esther Kofariji. This podcast highlights the experiences of Black women working and thriving in the tech industry. You'll learn about how they found their paths into tech, and hopefully you'll be inspired to consider whether there's a seat for you at the tech table.
Today's guest is Lee Wilkins-Tate, a New York-based recruiting coordinator. Hi, Lee.
Hi, hello. So excited to be here.
Awesome. We are very excited to have you as well. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so welcome to A Seat at the Tech Table. As we just said, we are excited to have you, and we're happy and excited to get straight into it. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
All right. Well, my name is Lee. I am a recruiting coordinator for a tech startup from New York, originally from the Midwest, relocated to New York about, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Have been in the people and talent HR realm for a while and had wanted to transition into the tech world and sort of stumbled upon an opening for a company that I had used their product for a while and was like, this is kismet. Like I can't not apply, and applied and got the job and am absolutely loving work.
Amazing. Okay, that's awesome. Like, we're gonna get into depth about your journey and your route into tech. But before we do, tell us a little bit about kind of life growing up as Lee. Tell us about some of your interests. It could be outside of tech, but yeah, we just want to get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm from the Midwest, born and raised in Chicago, moved to Ohio for a majority of my life. So I will claim both Chicago and the state of Ohio as my home. But all throughout my childhood, I just loved meeting people and having lots of friends and helping, people feel comfortable. I can remember when I was really, really young, seeing, the kid who was sitting by themselves or was a little bit more shy and sort of wanting to reach out to those people and connect with them and become friends with them. So I think all throughout my childhood and growing up, I just knew, I wanted to help people in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's just been evident throughout all of my interactions and things I've been interested in. I was always involved in how do I say it? The activities that the not stereotypical popular kids were into. In high school, I was on the speech team, and I was in choir, and thinking back to my group of friends, I'm we were a very peculiar bunch.
We love it.
Yes, but I loved it so much because my friend group was really made up of people who didn't really fit in one, particular mold or category. And I loved that because we all were so different. And I just loved the fact that we had a home with each other and we felt comfortable with each other. And I'm always I just love connecting with people who kind of feel like an outcast or a little bit different. And so that's, like I said, been evident throughout high school and college and grad school. Every sort of place I've been in, I feel like that's sort of what I gravitate to.
That's so cool. Do you think that's something that you noticed at that time? So when you were hanging around with your friends, did you notice them as different, or was this something in hindsight that you recognized?
I think it's more so in hindsight now, looking back and thinking of my experiences. I'm I was always friends with I was always friends with the people who were the loners. And I always felt I don't want them to be alone. If it's just me being with them, then I want to be with them. And those were the people who I think were more genuine and like we could be ourselves with each other. But I don't think in the moment I was thinking about that. I just think as I've reflected on my past and my career path, I think I've been like, it makes sense. I wanted to help people. I wanted people to feel included. And the decisions that I made and the people that I surrounded myself with, I think I was doing that, along the way.
I see. Amazing.
Cool. So was that what led you to kind of your university studies? So you studied kind of your bachelor's in organizational division and your master's was in education. It feels like it links, but I'd love to kind of know your thinking behind those choices.
Yeah. So I actually started going to school for my bachelor's degree. I actually was going in for nursing, and I did that for years. And I did it for years because the nursing programs were like super competitive. You'd usually be on the wait list when you applied. So I was on a wait list, I think, for like 3 years. So was just taking like whatever classes I could. Because I was like nursing, I'd get to help people. I'd be helping with someone's quality of life. And being able to connect with people on a personal level who were sick. And I really wanted to do that. And then I got into a program and started doing the clinicals. And I was like, this is great, but it's not for me. I learned that I get too emotionally attached to people. And that was hard for me to sort of break away from in nursing. I just remember like going to clinicals and like having such a great time and being fulfilled in the moment. But then after the day, I'd like be so like emotionally drained or sad because people's families weren't visiting them. And I was like, this is not, I could not do this every day. So when I went into organizational supervision, I was thinking more of one, I need to get out of college because I've been here for a while. But two, I was like, well, supervising and being a leader is a way to help people. It's a way to teach people, help them develop their professional skills and their career goals and skills. And so I was like, we're almost done with that degree, so we'll just go ahead and do it. But I think looking back, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that I went into that because I am a developer, meaning I will want to work with people to help them develop into the person that they want to be. And I always recognize that there's growth in someone and we just got to figure out, what steps we need to take to get them from point A to point B. So organizational supervision was definitely right in line with what I'm passionate about. And then I went to grad school for college student personnel and student affairs. And that's all about connecting with people, particularly students in college and universities, and just making sure that their transition to and through college is, I would say, as seamless as possible. But really teaching them like what it's like to be away from home for the first time, or like what things they need to know in order to live on their own. So when I think about it now, like it all makes so much sense as to why I went the route that I did. But I think in the moment, I was just like, yeah, this is cool. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. But again, like reflecting back on where I am now and looking back at the experiences I've had, I'm like, yeah, makes total sense based on what I wanted to do, which is help people.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said that kind of you did the things you did because you were interested and you thought it would be cool. But in those two kind of degrees, did you have a sense of the career path that was able to? Obviously, they were quite well linked to careers, but did you kind of say, oh yeah, I'm doing this, but then kind of pivot?
I think it was more of a pivot. And, my undergraduate degree, I think, like I said, I was mainly just like, I didn't spend 5 years trying to get a nursing degree and decided it wasn't for me. So I just need to get my piece of paper and get out of here. That was really just me trying to finish school. But I think going on to graduate school, I was like, okay, I definitely want to help people. I definitely want to work with college students. And I think it wasn't until after I'd graduated and had my first professional job and got a taste of recruiting and HR and that kind of stuff, where I was like, oh, this is what I really like, the career development specifically, and like getting people jobs and helping them feel valued in interview processes. That was when I was like, okay, this is going to help people, and this is what I truly enjoy doing. And so I think it was in that first professional job I had was when I pivoted towards, okay, now we finally figured out what we want to do with our life. So let's go that route. And it's just been a great journey the whole way, even if the first half wasn't intentional. It's been such like a learning and growing process for me. But yeah, like I said, it was definitely a pivot and not really a, this is what I'm destined to do type thing.
Sure. So tell me about your journey to that first professional job. What was the application process like? Or how did you even find out about it and get into it?
So going to grad school, I went to school, as I said, for college student personnel, which is like, in my opinion, super niche. Like, you're going to work at a university, you're going to work with college students. It's really just, are you going to work with them where they live, or are you going to work with them academically? So the first professional job I had, I went through a process that was super intense. There was this big, like, call it a career fair over multiple days. And over those days, you're just booking interviews with different schools, and you're just going like back to back to back interviewing. Then you get a little message that's like, we like you, or we ain't trying to work with you. And you're like, oh, okay. So it was just go, go, go. And I remember going to this, and I had like in my mind these schools that I wanted to work at. And I was like so thrilled to interview with them, and it didn't work out. And I was like, I have no plan B. Like, all my like plan A's, I thought one of them would work out, and it didn't. But interviewed at a school that I was like, what the hey, might as well work. And had a great time interviewing with them. Standard interview, typical like, why do you want to work here? Tell us about your strengths and weaknesses, that kind of stuff. But it was the people that I met that I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to work with them. So that whole experience led to me coming down to an in-person interview with them. And I had a whole long day of interviews with them. And then they called me like a week later and was like, do you want to work here? And I'm like, yeah. Also, how much are you paying me? It was just, I was so excited. And I'm so thankful for that, because that job was so pivotal for me. I think that's where I learned a whole lot about myself. I learned a lot about what kind of work environments I wanted to be in, what type of people I wanted to work with. And then, of course, that's when I got to get into talent and recruitment. And that was where I was able to start developing those skills of interviewing people, screening resumes, and that sort of thing.
So was that part of the job as advertised, or is that something that emerged within that role?
That was something that just emerged. Like, I knew you would be put on the committees. And in my experience previously, I was always on the diversity committee for obvious reasons. So I just assumed if I was on our committee, they'd put me on diversity committee, and I'd be like, okay, great. But they put me on the professional and graduate recruitment committee, and I was like, cool, whatever. But little did I know that would be what would kickstart my career as it is today. So that, again, it's just by chance that I had the opportunity to do something and then absolutely fell in love with it.
I love that, because it's sometimes those unexpected elements of our roles that kind of lead us down the path that we're going. Super cool.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how did you navigate kind of, I guess, what you might call your early career? Were you kind of always on the lookout for new roles, or did roles come to you quite organically?
So I think in my career, I've always made the decision to look for something else. So my first professional job, obviously, like I just graduated from grad school. So I was like, I need employment. So I looked for that one. And then the following career or job that I had, I also looked for that. I think it's how they showed up was sort of like, oh, like I said, my first career or my first professional job, that one just, they asked to interview me and I was like, sure, why not? Because the other places I wanted to go to didn't want me. So I was like, whatever. And everyone after that, it was me just being like, I guess I'll toss my name in the hat, not really thinking it would work out. Yeah, it's all been me being kind of taken by surprise when they call me and be like, oh, I've got an interview. Okay. And I think a lot of the experiences that I've had, both career-wise and outside of my job, have been like that, where I'm like, I'm not qualified for that. Or this person is like some like famous person that I know good and well they're not looking at every message they get, but what the hey, like, I'll do it. And then someone calling me or getting a response or whatever, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so now I gotta like do something now that I've gotten some sort of response.
Cool. So what I see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when I look at kind of your career experience is, like you said, you were working at the university, kind of you got that role, and it wasn't talent and people focused, but it had that element to it. Mm-hmm. After that point, did you start to say to yourself, okay, no, people and talent is the direction I want to go in? And how did you kind of, whether you did or not, intently make moves in that direction?
Yeah, so I think once I got that taste of people and talent and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do every day, that's when I started to sort of look for things that were in that realm. I think because my experience was so niche working in higher education, in order for me to pivot out of that, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to stick with education because that's what all my background is, but maybe I can look for, you know, a talent or recruiter role that is still in education, but maybe like K through 12. And that's actually what I ended up doing. I transitioned from higher education to K through 12 and worked as a talent associate for a charter school. And that, I think, is how I got my foot in the door to work in talent and people and HR specifically. So once I got that job and had a little experience under my belt, I did more education on a broader level. So I went from higher education to K through 12 to working for an organization that supported K through 12 schools nationally in the US. And then after I had that, I was like, okay, now we can try to step outside of education now that we have a few years out of higher ed and a few years in education. And that's when I was like, we're just going to try it. We're going to apply at this tech startup. We got the experience in a vast majority of, or a vast range of organizations. So I was like, what the heck? Let's do it. So I think it was like baby steps of, okay, this has transferable skills. Now this has transferable skills. So let's make our way over.
Yeah. I really love what you said about kind of you used your education experience to help you get a foot in the door with a talent role. And I think that's so important for people to kind of bear in mind. You always have an advantage, whether you are a nurse who wants to get into the tech space or any other space, but you use what you have as your leverage to get into the next opportunity. I think especially when it comes to tech, people feel like, oh, I don't have any tech experience, I don't need to code, I don't know how to code, but almost any single sector that you come from has a potential route into tech, be it education, be it people, be it medical. I mean, there's like med tech or fit tech, like there's always a linkage. And I think finding those are ways to kind of create opportunity for yourself. So yeah, that's huge.
Yep. Absolutely agree. And I think it took me a while to recognize that. Like, I legitimately thought I was going to be stuck in education forever. Like, I was like, this is the only thing I have experience in. But I had to like remind myself of, just because it's education focused doesn't mean I can't do the same things elsewhere. And it also doesn't mean that a tech company isn't looking for someone with different experiences, because you know, if they've never tried it, they wouldn't know. So I was like, yeah, I'm about to look, I got education experience, and maybe we could try some things that we were doing in education that would work for you. And so I sort of leaned into that and used that as an advantage to say, I have a different perspective that I can bring to the table. And I think a lot of times we psych ourselves out because we don't have specific, you know, experiences that maybe they look for in a resume. But I always say, like, if it's similar, whatever, try it out. The worst they can say is no. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe someone else will say yes. So
cool. Obviously, kind of people and talent has emerged as the focus of your career. And as you said, it's been a part of your life ever since kind of your youth. I'm interested to know about the people who have impacted your career. So obviously you don't need to name names, but are there kind of key people either from who are maybe in leadership in organizations you've worked in, or even people whose lives you've impacted? I'd love to hear some stories.
Yeah. So I attribute a lot of what I do and have done to my mom. For a lot of my childhood, it was me and my mom. And she worked in higher education. So like I legitimately followed in her footsteps with, with what I ended up doing. But my mom has always been like very accepting of people and very caring. And so I think as a kid, I just loved my mom so much. I mean, I still do, but I was like, I want to do everything my mom does because she's amazing. So I think like just being young, wanting to do what my mom did because it just felt so good to me. That's sort of how I got into caring for people and, you know, wanting to make sure people felt accepted. I think my passion for people and talent now really comes from my boss from that first job I had, where he put me on the recruitment committee. I thank him all the time for putting me on that committee, because I'm like, I didn't know what I was doing before. I was just kind of floating and like, whatever, this is my path. But he really taught me a lot in those 2 years. And I have told him that like without him, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
Wow.
So I'm really thankful for him, and I still connect with him. And then I think to just like supervisors I've had along the way, the good and the bad, for just, you know, teaching me what to do, what not to do, what, you know, how to connect with people, how to not connect with people. I think there's been a lesson in every sort of job I've had where I've learned how to interact with people and how to be adaptable in this space. So I think those folks, and even a supervisor that I had well before I got into my professional career, who just really pushed me to go outside of my comfort zone. And I ended up growing so much because of that. So just, I'm super thankful for those people for exposing me to experiences that I otherwise may not have had, and for pushing me a little bit further, like push me just enough for me to try something new. I would not be where I am today without those people. So I think those people I'm so grateful for.
Amazing stuff. And you said something that I actually want to pick up on as well. You said that mentioned an important part of your role is being adaptable. And I'd love for you to kind of express that a little bit more, because I think from the outside, when it comes to kind of people in recruitment, it can seem quite rigid in some ways. Obviously, you have processes and there's all sorts of rules about the way you have to kind of hire people and manage people. So I'd love you to tell us about the flexibility that support.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Especially with HR, there are things that you cannot be flexible with. I think for me, it's more about being flexible with change. And I think in people and talent and HR, there's a lot of like moving pieces and parts and people. And sometimes it feels like you just got a process down. You're like, okay, this is great, it's smooth sailing. And then they're like, actually, we're going to change this. We're going to change this process. And you have to be okay with that, because things change. I think we saw it a lot when everything switched to working remote. You just have to be adaptable, and you have to say, okay, I'm working with other humans. So like not everyone is the same, and not everything is going to work right for everyone. And so you have to be able to adapt to the different situations at different times. So I think just even working with candidates with their interview processes, you know, some people are great with the process we have of you're going to interview all day with one break, maybe two, and that's it. And you're like, great, boom, got it. Scheduled this person. But not everyone's like that. You know, sometimes people are neurodiverse, and you have to be able to say, okay, you cannot sit and do 3 hours of interviews and then a break. And so you have to be adaptable with the processes that you have, and like how you're able to accommodate people as people in those processes. And so I think once you're able to adapt to those situations, it makes your job a heck of a lot easier. So I try not to get stuck on any one process, literally, because I always tell myself, like, if no one's going to die from this change that I make to accommodate a candidate, then it's good to go. So I think in that sense, it's truly helped me be less stressed in this particular field and the job that I do now with coordinating.
Flexibility, and you talked about needed to be adaptable in your role, and I'm saying that the kind of external perception of like recruitment and people is that it's quite rigid. So yeah, feel free to run with that.
Okay. Yeah. So I've learned being adaptable in the people and talent and HR space is more so about being able to use the processes that are in place, that using them in the best way possible for the candidate. And I think a lot of times people get so stuck in the, well, this is how our interview process looks, and we're just going to stick with that. But that doesn't always work for every candidate. And I think a lot of times you have to remind yourself that these candidates are people too, right? And like each candidate is going to be different. And the process isn't just going to be a one size fits all. So I think too, some experiences I've had where I'm scheduling a candidate for an interview, and it's, we have a standard process of you do a full day, you might do like a 4-hour block of interviews, get a 1-hour break, and then do like another 3 hours. Some people that works great for. Some people cannot do that, and that's okay. And I have to be adaptable in that, okay, yes, we have a standard process of 2 blocks of interviews with 1 break, but some people might need, smaller interview chunks with breaks in between. And so breaking up that large break into 4 smaller breaks. So I think being adaptable is being able to sort of run with the things that you have, like the things that you cannot change, but being creative in a way that you're still sticking to the processes and the procedures, but doing it in a way that adds value to the candidate, and making sure that the candidate feels seen, not only as a person looking for a job, but as a human being. And I think it's also about being adaptable in that sometimes processes change without any warning. And you sometimes just have to be okay with that, even if you're used to, this is the way we were doing it, and now we're doing it a different way. You have to be able to just adapt and go with the flow sometimes.
Super cool.
Okay. So you are now currently a recruiting coordinator at Discord. Can you tell us how you got into that role?
Yeah, so I had been a Discord user, oh my gosh, for like maybe 5 years or so. Used it on a daily basis for hours on end. And I knew it was a company that I could get behind, being someone who used it regularly. And so I would always periodically check their job boards. A lot of their jobs are software engineers and other things that I have no knowledge about, but I would always look at the people, talent, and vibe section and be like, maybe one day something will pop up on there that I can apply for. So again, one of the random days where I was like, let me see if Discord's hiring. Lo and behold, it was a recruiting coordinator role. It was the only role that they were hiring for that was remote at the time, because they are based in San Francisco. So it's one of the few jobs on their entire website that they were hiring remote, but the only people and talent team role that was hiring remotely. And I was like, I have to, even though I was content with the job that I was at the time, I was like, there's no way I'm going to pass up on applying at Discord for a job that I know I can do. So let me just do it. And a few days later, got that email invitation and I was like, oh snap. Like, this is it. And went through that process. Yeah, but really, like, it was, again, one of those things where I was just like, I'm going to just see. Maybe they're hiring. I don't know. And it was there.
So that's so cool. So obviously, like you just mentioned that it's something that you use daily and you were familiar with. Did you really kind of consider about moving into a new industry? Like, did this cross your mind in terms of like the changes and the impact it will have to the work that you're doing? Or how did you kind of like get your mind around moving industry, but slightly still doing the same thing that you were doing?
Yeah, I think I do content creation I'm not consistent with streaming, but from time to time I will. But I am in an organization called Brown Girl Gamer Code, which is a community of Black and brown women who are interested in gaming and tech. You know, we have folks who do content creation. We have folks who are, you know, in the tech industry. And so in being in that community and seeing all the women who look like me wanting to get their foot in the door but not being able to, I think seeing that, I was like, okay. I'm like, I do like recruitment and talent on a regular basis. So I was like, if I could somehow get into this field to be able to help other women like me get here as well, then that's what I'm going to do. So I think it really, like, I attribute my interest in wanting to go into the gaming and tech industry a lot on the community that I am a part of. And doing more research and seeing that there aren't as many of us as I like to see in gaming and tech, specifically in like senior roles. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to start at the bottom and sort of work my way up, which is fine. But I knew I wanted to be able to make a difference and help women who look like me feel like they could do this. So I think it just sort of made sense. And then being someone who uses Discord a lot and seeing the impact that it had on my life, I was like, I'd love to work for a company like Discord. And then to get a job at Discord, I was like, this is unreal. And I still sometimes think that, but I'm just definitely passionate about and committed to helping women of color get into the space, because it's not like it's unheard of, like we're here, but I think we need more of us and we need to make more noise. And so that is what I've committed myself to doing. And I think the first step was me getting into this space.
Amazing. Okay, so you just made a point, and I just kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. So you said that the words were the impact that Discord has had on my life. Could you just speak on exactly what that impact is?
Yeah, for me, I used Discord, like I said, I used Discord daily. And when I first started creating content, streaming, I didn't know, like, I was like, how do streamers meet people? Like, I didn't know. And so in doing my research, I kept seeing like, oh, join this Discord server. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And finally joined a server. I was like, oh, okay, so it's just a place where you can like chat with people. So then I started joining like different communities. And there was a community that I joined that at the time I think was really pivotal for me, because I started doing like recruitment stuff for the committee. Like I was like, okay, or for the community, I'm like, okay, I got to get more people into this community. So I'm going to like go talk to other streamers and be like, hey, you should join the community that I'm in. And I started like connecting with the moderators of the community to say like, these are the things we need to do to support people. And I was like, this is great. Like it was giving me more insight into what people in content creation need and are looking for, and also helped me learn how to like recruit people in the field. It seems far-fetched, but the way I was working for this community, people would be like, do they pay you? And I'm like, no. But it was so, I think, transformational for me, because I was able to do what I love for people in a space that I was really enjoying. And I got a lot of experience through doing stuff through that community. Again, learned more about recruiting, was able to like make pitches to companies about why they should work with us. And I think a lot of times people like don't think what they do in the content creation space is like worth anything. But that's stuff that I ended up putting on my resume in like my little section of like other things that I do. I'm like, yeah, I'm in this space every day. Like, I'm like, I use your product every day. I know, what streamers and content creators are looking for. So I think just my use of the product changed how I see things. And also it changed me in that like I've connected with some amazing people on Discord, some friends that I have now I met on Discord in various communities. And we've been friends for going on 5 years. So I think it's just I owe things to Discord as well for some of my growth and relationships that I have today.
Amazing. Okay, so it's like your story's so interesting, and we've been kind of like touching on what your role is, but like just to give our listeners a good idea and understanding of what you do day to day, could you just kind of give us what like an average day looks like? What is involved in the work that you do?
Yeah, so typically in my role as a recruiting coordinator, I connect with candidates who are going through the interview process at Discord. So typically I come in after they've spoken to a recruiter and are moving through the process. So I'll help them schedule an interview with a hiring manager. I will help them schedule interviews for any sort of skills tests that we're doing. I'll also help schedule them for their full day interview as well. And then I really just connect with hiring managers and recruiters to make sure our processes are tight and smooth and that the candidate experience is a positive one. And I also make sure pipelines are moving quickly. So that's making sure candidates are moving through the process and there's no lag for candidates so that they're getting a response from someone, whether they are moving forward or not, in a timely manner. And then sometimes it's really just connecting with candidates. I'll spend all day sending gifts to a candidate just to make sure they know I haven't forgotten about them, but I'm still, working on a schedule. So that's the gist of what I do on a daily basis as a recruiting coordinator.
Oh. No, it's so interesting to kind of like get a bit of a glimpse of that, because I think for many of us, we don't really understand what is entailed in terms of the life of a recruiter and what the things that they have to kind of manage. So that's super interesting. I think one thing that I definitely feel like you have a good perspective on, and it would just be nice for you to share if you're able to, it's just, I guess for many people, they are a candidate. So what kind of things do you notice as the recruiter, or advice would you give to our listeners for someone who's kind of going through that process of applying for like a role in a tech organization?
Yeah, as cliche as this is going to sound, I cannot say it enough, but I always tell candidates to be themselves. I think a lot of times you hear that and you're like, yeah, okay, but I'm still going to be like super professional on my A game. And I think having been in education and now being in the tech industry, I think there's more room to be yourself in the tech industry, because at least where I am at Discord, we definitely value the person. And like, yes, there are things that you need to do that to be professional or what have you, but we definitely value you as a person. And I think a lot of times you lose that in an interview because you want to make sure you seem, clean, crisp, polished. But at the end of the day, you're a human. And I think I try to remind candidates of that, of like, you're a human. There's things that you like, and you want to present your true self when you interview, because there's nothing worse than having to be this weird version of yourself at work for 8 hours a day. So I always just say, be yourself, be authentic, and answer honestly. And I always tell candidates as well, just because it doesn't work out doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Sometimes the role you think is for you isn't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Use that experience in that interview to your advantage. You've at least learned that that isn't the right fit, but the right fit is just not here for you yet. And I think I also want people to know to ask questions. Some of the best information I've gotten is from asking questions from interviewers candidly, because you want to know what you're getting into. And I've been at jobs where they present one thing during the process, and then you get there, you're like, this is not, y'all ain't, like the two things that I'm seeing are very different. So I always tell people, like, don't be afraid to ask about things that you're curious about. Because we spend a lot of time at work every day, and it's important for you to know what you're getting yourself into.
Let's dive into kind of gaming. So I'm not a big gamer. I probably got into gaming a little bit more with VR, and I'm super excited about kind of immersive games, because that was always my thing. I like to be doing things physically rather than kind of gaming on a screen. So VR is definitely my route. But yeah, tell us about kind of your interest in gaming and that world.
Yeah, so I'm like not great at games. I've learned also that like I don't play nicely with other people. Like I've been told, and I know that I get competitive and like get mean. So single player games is where, is where I thrive. But I like relaxing games. Animal Crossing has been what I've been playing a lot of lately. The Sims is what got me really into games. I think I started playing with The Sims 2 and bought like every expansion under the sun. It's still to this day buy every expansion under the sun. I also play a little bit of World of Warcraft. I really just like any game that doesn't require a lot of skill. And then I can kind of just like zone out and relax too. I do play a little bit of like shooting pew pew games. But like I said, I'm so bad. Like if my team is relying on me to kill someone, I just immediately, I'm like, I'm so sorry, because it's not going to happen. Like I can shoot the air and the ground, and that's about it. But I have fun trying. So I think a lot of the like chill games is that's my sweet spot. Yeah.
All right, I need to check some of those out. So in terms of obviously kind of working generally is very tiring or very intense, and I'm sure working at a tech startup is a very intense experience. So I'm sure gaming is part of how you find balance, but do you do anything else to kind of zone out?
Yeah, I do some crafting. I got a Cricut about a year ago. And so I try to make things and be creative from time to time. So that's cool to just sometimes, think up something and be like, can't I make this? So I do that a lot to zone out. And then one of my goals for this year is to do more reading. So I've got some books lined up that I want to start reading, because I'm trying to force myself to have less screen time, just because working all day on the computer and then gaming, I'm like, that's a lot of screen time. So I'm trying to do some more reading. So I'm hoping I'll pick that up as a for real hobby this year.
Okay, so you've been in this tech startup for a few months now. What would you say are your future plans or your long-term plans, if you had?
Yeah, I think for me, Right now, I'm really happy with being a recruiting coordinator. And I think for the longest time, I was always thinking about the next step. So for me right now, I'm enjoying the moment. And this is a conversation I have had with my supervisor of like, I just want to enjoy this moment because I have a job that I love. It doesn't feel like work to me. So let me just soak that in for a few months. But I think in the future, I would like to work more on candidate experience. That is definitely my passion area. I value the candidate's experience, whether they get the job or not. I want them to still walk away feeling like that was great. And even if I didn't get it, I still had a great time where I learned something about myself. So I'd love to move more into candidate experience, as well as like onboarding for folks who come into the company. I think that, the first few months are super important. And when you don't start great, you usually don't have a great perception of the company. So I want to make sure people who start with us feel valued and feel like we were prepared for them to come. So I think those are probably the two routes that I'm thinking about. But I don't want to not work with candidates directly. So probably either of those two things.
Amazing. And do you think these are things that you would want to do kind of like beyond the tech industry, or are you quite happy in the tech industry? Like, what has the tech industry kind of shown you that is a bit different to other industries?
Yeah, I think the tech industry has shown me that it's okay to be yourself, like your true self at work. I've never had that before. I've always been like, oh yeah, that's work Lee, and this is real Lee, like my friends see. And Discord has been the first place where I haven't had to have two versions of myself. So I don't think you'd find that in any other industry. You might like find it at other small startups, but I feel like in tech, it's okay to be more your authentic self. And so I'd love to stay in that realm. And yeah, I see myself staying at Discord for a while. And I think once I've been fulfilled and feel like there's nothing else I can contribute to the company, then maybe it will be time for me to move away. But right now, being someone who just started, I'm like, oh yeah, let me be here forever, and then and then we'll go from there. So I'm really excited. I'm glad I got my foot in the door in gaming and tech, because I always felt like it was maybe where I needed to be. And now that I'm here, I'm like, yes, I can never leave. So whatever that means, that's what we're going to do. So,
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. It's been really good speaking with you. And I know that the people listening will want to kind of follow you and find out more about you. So please let us know where people can find you online.
Yes. So I can be found at ohsnapitsli on basically any social media platform. That's Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I think that might be my TikTok. I don't know. I'm not really hip to TikTok, but you can find me at ohsnapitsli everywhere. And email is ohsnapitsli@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As Esther's mentioned, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Honestly, at the tech table. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today and listening to this episode of A Seat at the Tech Table. You can connect with us on our social media platforms. Just search @SistersInTech on Twitter and Instagram, and check out our website www.sistersin.tech to see what we've got going on. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, and we'll bring you the next episode soon.